Now, you would recall that we have always had a view on this program, and I have always been very clear that proportionality is what is endlessly missing from the COVID lockdown situation, be it the stupid border closures, be it the snap lockdowns, or be it what's happening in Victoria right now. And then there are the politicians who make the bad decisions, and then when they get called out for it, try to extend the fear. This today was the message from the Victorian government.
It's a 7-day circuit breaker shutdown. And what we've been clear and upfront on every day is each day we review based on the intelligence and the material that we've got before us. And it's too early to make that announcement.
Rubbish. There is no need for a statewide lockdown. We've known this since the moment they introduced it, and I'm going to show you why I don't even think there needs to be a Melbourne-wide lockdown. Because when you actually have a look at the facts, they are the true north of all of this. Forget all the spin, forget all the fear. This is the reality of what we know a few days into this lockdown that, of course, started as soon as Friday kicked into gear last week. It'll keep going until Thursday of this week. They should be lifting it, certainly for regional areas now, and as I say, for most of Melbourne. Let me explain why. There is no need for a statewide lockdown because just 12 of the 79 local government areas or council areas around the entire state have got one case at all. There is not a single case in regional Victoria. This is days after the lockdown and all of the fears that they had about contact sites and all the rest of it. And here's the truth about why you don't even need the full lockdown in Melbourne. Because you see, 67% of all of the cases that currently exist, and we are talking about 40 right now outside of hotel quarantine, 40 are all in one part of Melbourne alone. Now, this is a map of the local government areas that exist in Melbourne. And I want you to look at the top left-hand side of the screen, the northwestern part of the screen, because that is where the problem is. In Whittlesea, in Hume, in Melton, Mooreland, these are the areas that are the problem. And if you want to talk about an area that should be locked down, it has to be Whittlesea. Why? Because they have 19 of the 40 cases in one local government alone. Next door in Hume, next door in Mooreland, next door in Moreland, next door in Melton is where you get to 67% of all of the cases that are in Victoria right now. Not one in regional Victoria, yet regional Victoria is locked down. Huge swathes of local government areas with not one case. Now, this is despite the fact that one of the reasons why the lockdown was apparently necessary was because the new Indian variant of definitely not the China virus was apparently so bad that you could get crook in just one day.
This variant is moving faster still. The time between catching the virus and passing it on is tighter than ever.
Now, if that was the case, you would have expected that the number of cases would have gone through the roof by now. We're still at 40. And you would imagine that all of those different local government areas, including Whittlesea that's having the problems, would be going through the roof. Now, whether I can pronounce the council areas or not, the facts remain the same. And I apologise to the residents of the area that I mispronounced. But have a look at this. There have been 148,000 tests, and this has been awesome. The number of people who have gone to get their COVID test. 148,000 since Friday, Saturday, today. 148,000 tests. But just 14 new cases? When supposedly this thing was so potent that within a day it would show its head? Well, here we are, multiple days into the lockdown, and it is not showing its head anywhere near the numbers. In fact, if you had a look at the 14 positive coronavirus cases of the 147,000 tests that have happened, that is a 0.01 number of people that have ended up testing positive for COVID-19. This thing does not need to be a lockdown statewide. It's not in enough areas. It doesn't even have to be in all of Melbourne because there has not been the super spread that they feared would happen. Remember, they told you just one day would be the difference between getting in contact with this thing and potentially it becoming in your system. 0.01%, 14 cases, of the 147,000. 15, my apologies. There you go. These are the details. These are the facts. They don't lie. But the politicians, now that they have been caught in a lockdown that you didn't need to be in, one that they should have been able to proportionally manage, well, now it's changed the subject. And just as we have seen with other Labor governments around the country, what do? Well, you start whinging and moaning about the federal government, when of course it is the state government who decides to have the lockdown, and the state government who refuses to see a difference between regional Melbourne and Melbourne, the rest of Melbourne and northwestern Melbourne.
Now remember, only yesterday we heard representatives of the federal government saying that they were the party for the workers. Well, nice words. It would be really good if the self-styled party of the workers actually did some work for working people and provided them with the assistance that they need, indeed that they require. I am angry and I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed because whilst all the language talks about a partnership, it delivers nothing in real terms for the people who need it most. They like to pride themselves on being the party of the forgotten people. Well, the people they seem to have forgotten is Victorians, and in particular Victorian workers.
The forgotten people, you have locked up the entire state for 40 cases, 67% of which are in one cluster in and around Whittlesea. Talk about set off a shiny object and people will start to pay attention. This is a political game because they overreacted. Well, in response, the Treasurer jumped on Facebook today because they don't want this to turn into the slanging match that the Labor states want it to be. Because remember, there is no major state election between now and the federal election, which means the next ballot box will be the federal ballot box, most likely early next year. So Josh Frydenberg said this today about the amount of money that is actually there for Victoria, despite the fact the Victorian government, not the federal government, the Victorian government decided to lock everyone down, despite the fact that 67% of cases are in Whittlesea plus 4 adjoining councils. The amount of federal government direct economic support delivered to Victoria is 3 times that of delivered by the state government. The pandemic leave disaster payments are still available to people. That's $1,500 as part of the National Health Emergency Crisis Payment. So if for whatever reason you needed that particular money, you can get it out of the feds. For businesses that have experienced losses, they can have loss carryback measures, which means you can claim it against your cash flow, and you can do so at the end of the financial year, which of course is coming up in the next month or so. But if for whatever reason you were on the bones of your backside and you needed a few $100s to get you through the next few days of this totally unnecessary lockdown in Victoria, well, if you can, go and get a test. Because the Victorian government will pay you $450 to wait for the outcome of the test. Will they be paying the 148,387 people who have taken the test, of which 0.01 actually have coronavirus? I don't know. But to give you an idea here, the state government had decided to announce today about $250 million. They claim that grants can be given to businesses of up to $2,500, also sole traders as well. If you have a liquor licence, you can get $3,500, but we'll talk about that a little later. But if you want just one more reminder about how proportionality is what is missing from the Victorian government while they now try to change the subject to a battle with the federal government, can I turn your attention to the end of last year, just a couple of days before Christmas, where the Northern Beaches cluster was the problem the New South Wales government was dealing with. Just 2 days into their lockdown, there was 90 cases. 3 days after the Victorian lockdown started, they are at 40 cases. Let's all say it together. 67% of which are in and around one local government area. There is no need for a statewide lockdown. You do not need to punish people outside of Melbourne, and you definitely don't need to be punishing the majority of people in Melbourne. It is a disgrace.